For thousands of years, humans have looked to the sky to give meaning to their lives. At night, when the sky dimmed, our ancestors told stories, relating them to the stars. Tales, life lessons, and philosophies made up our evenings, a time to let our practical minds rest and abstract minds wander. Fast forward to the 2020s, and most of us live under a night sky blotted out with city lights, spending the vast majority of our time at night indoors, often staring at our screens. Have we lost an important connection to an integral part of our natural world, the night sky? Today, a quarter to one-third of the Western world believes astrology is accurate at predicting some facet of their personality or life experiences. Some for fun and entertainment, others more seriously. Most use it in reference to their sun sign, Aries, Taurus, etc., the supposed constellation location the sun was in on the day of their birth. But what if almost all of them were not using the actual location of the sun, or the rest of the planets for that matter? What if their supposed sun sign was completely different from where the sun actually was on their birthday? It is believed that around 500 BC, Babylonians and likely earlier other civilizations began making calendars by simplifying the constellations along the ecliptic into 12 equal parts of 30 degrees each, what we know of today as the Zodiac wheel. However, the constellations vary in size and are not equal in the number of degrees they take up along the ecliptic. Larger constellations like Virgo take up over 45 degrees, while smaller ones like Cancer span less than 20. The simplified calendar and astrological system are the early roots of where we get our modern-day astrological charts of 12 equal signs, each given an even 30 days of the year for our sun signs. For instance, Aries is between March 21st and April 19th. However, in truth, Aries is much smaller than this, and the sun is in Aries for less than 30 days. So why did these ancient civilizations create such a simplified system if it took away from the actual sky? It's likely because they wanted to time seasonal events more consistently, such as the beginning of spring. This makes sense for the time because so much of life depended on the seasons, particularly for agriculture and travel. Where that leaves us today, unfortunately, is with an astrological system that no longer reflects the actual sky. So the question is, why do we still use this simplified system? Isn't astrology supposed to use the sky? Hence the word astrology, derived from the ancient Greek word astrologia, meaning treating of the stars. To understand this, let's first give credit where credit is due. In the East, Vedic astrologers in India kept many of the essential roots of using the actual constellations. Although they still use an even 30 degrees for each of the signs, they have an in-depth system whereby each segment of the signs are broken down into smaller and smaller parts, into what are called nakshatras and padas. These divisions of the zodiac do a very good job of describing the constellations that the planets actually are in. For example, although Vedic astrology might say someone's sun is in Cancer when in fact it's in the constellation Leo, the nakshatras of that location will describe many of the Leo traits associated with that part of the sky. The story is vastly different in the West, however. Around 200 AD, an astrologer by the name of Ptolemy proposed the idea of fixing the signs around the seasons, so that every spring equinox, the sun is at 0 degrees Aries in the astrological chart. The purpose of this was to solve a problem for astrologers at the time known as precession, whereby the sun does not originate to the same exact position in the sky every year. So it might mean the start of spring when the sun enters Aries one year may not years later. The change is very subtle, about 1 degree every 72 years. However, over a long enough period of time, this change can be drastic. To solve this problem, Ptolemy proposed the idea of fixing the chart around the seasons, instead of the ever-changing sky. This idea was adopted by the establishment through the Middle Ages in Europe, and now is what almost everyone in the West uses today. The problem for us today is that 1 degree every 72 years of variation has now left us with almost a full sign difference from the actual sky. In other words, what seasonal or tropical astrology says is a sun in Aries during spring is actually a sun in Pisces. So the question remains, why do we still use this system of astrology which does not reflect the actual sky? If you ask a Western astrologer today, they would likely say something along the lines of that Western astrology isn't meant to reflect the sky or the constellations. It's a seasonal system that works because it is sun-centered and consistent with the seasons. And there is truth to this, since with a seasonal system there is consistency, and thus we should still be able to recognize and categorize patterns. They would probably also say that we've been using this form of astrology for thousands of years, and it works, which is also valid since countless people proclaim the accuracy of Western tropical astrology. Another common argument is that it works because it is now part of the collective consciousness. Since so many people follow and believe it, it now has an influence over the lives of everyone in the Western world. Whatever the argument in favor of tropical astrology is, the question posed another way is, why aren't we using the actual constellations at all, as at least a separate system in the West? If seasonal astrology has validity, then shouldn't star-based astrology? Why do 99+% of people using astrology in the West completely neglect to also use a system that uses the actual constellations? After all, there is tarot, numerology, and countless other mediums used for the same purpose. The reason is simply that many just don't know. When someone hears their sun is in Gemini, they believe their sun is in Gemini, the constellation. So what would happen if almost everyone in the West who uses astrology knew they were using a seasonal system, and that there is a whole other system that uses the constellations? Would 99+% still use the seasonal system without ever using the constellation-based system? Possibly, but the trend appears to be shifting. Since 2016, the worldwide Google search term for Sidereal Astrology, the name of the astrology that references the stars, has been on a steady uptrend. It appears more and more people are discovering this form of astrology for the first time, a definite trend shift from previous years. However, this doesn't completely solve the problem. Most so-called sidereal astrology systems don't use the actual constellations either. The vast majority still use an even 30 degrees, like the Vedic astrologers discussed earlier. A small but growing number of sidereal astrologers do use the natural uneven constellations. This form of astrology is sometimes called astronomical astrology or true sidereal astrology. Most of these systems also take into account Ophiuchus, also known as the 13th sign, a constellation which passes through the ecliptic that was omitted from the original 12 zodiac signs during the Babylonian and pre-Babylonian simplifying of the zodiac. After all, 13 does not divide so evenly for calendars and charts like the number 12. A word of caution when using these astronomical or true sidereal systems. Many unfortunately are using what are called the IAU boundaries for determining how many degrees each constellation takes up along the ecliptic. The IAU is an astronomical union, not an astrological one. The dates and degrees given do not reference the ecliptic, and were never originally intended to be used for astrological purposes. Unfortunately, the Wikipedia page for tropical and sidereal astrology currently lists the IAU dates as the astronomical astrology dates. It's important to keep in mind that these dates are highly inaccurate to the actual constellation sizes along the ecliptic. So with all this confusion about which system and dates to use, what are we supposed to do? Luckily, the advent of technology has given us planet charting software in the palm of our hands. Apps like Star Chart and computer programs like Stellarium allow us to see the sky exactly as it was at the time of our birth. I highly recommend downloading one of these softwares and seeing the sky as it was on your birthday. Links are down below. If you would like to see your planets in an astrological chart, below is a birth chart calculator that uses the actual constellations in the sky. Unlike the IAU boundaries, it takes the midpoint or halfway point between constellations along the ecliptic as the boundary. This reflects the actual location of the planets as we would see them in the visible sky. Keep in mind that many constellations have gaps between them and overlap, so anything within 3 degrees of another sign should be considered a blend of both signs. For an even simpler method, below is a link to the true sidereal sun sign dates, using the same midpoint method as the chart calculator. Again, anything within 3 days of another sign should be considered a blend. And after looking at your sun sign, I highly recommend looking at the rest of your planets with the birth chart calculator. If you resonated from your mainstream sun sign and it's different from your true sidereal sign, there's a high chance one of your personality planets, such as Mercury or Venus, are in the mainstream sign. Happy exploring the wonderful world of true sidereal astrology, a system we have used far longer than these recent simplified systems. If you believe humans derive meaning from the sky longer than the past 3,000 or 4,000 years, then it's easy to see that these recent systems take up just a small blip in the grand scheme of our history, of what we've likely been doing for tens of thousands of years, using the actual, visible sky. If you have any further questions, please feel free to email me at athen@masteringthezodiac.com. Be sure to subscribe for videos on the current planetary placements, and for more information and resources, visit masteringthezodiac.com. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and share this video with your friends and family, and comment down below, what do you think about using or not using the visible sky in astrology?